Fred felt a deep sadness as he read through the newspaper. All the news of his friends dying made him want to cry. Suddenly, his garden work became full useless in the light of this tragedy. He put the paper down and knelt on the floor, not knowing what else to do. All he could do was remember his friends and the good times they shared. Joe had brought chaos to Sunnyvale with all his evil deeds. Nobody could find him, not even in heaven. Little did they know, he had actually ended up in the underworld, sentenced to pay for the misdeeds he had committed. All his plans had backfired. He had destroyed relationships, burned down buildings, and caused untold suffering. Joe had paid the ultimate price for all his wickedness. Phil was horrified as he witnessed the destruction that Spike had caused. Spike had paid him back big time. The platform was broken, and Spike was falling now 20 feet to the ground. Fortunately, he was unharmed, but little was left of Phil's house was a pile of rubble. Phil knew he had deserved it, but he never expected Spike to take things too far. Sunny had struggled against the bonds as the match burned closer and closer. Joe stood there, silent and still, watching as the flames grew larger. Sunny had nowhere to go. She was trapped. The fire quickly engulfed her as soon everything was engulfed in smoke and flames. Joe didn't move a muscle, watching as his victim burned alive until she was nothing but ashes. Somebody chuckled as he filled up the grave. "This job keeps getting easier every day," he muttered. He had just buried Billy, Bob, and Bart alive. They had all been struck by lightning, and were now out cold. As everything had happened so quickly, Gonzalez felt triumphant. He had shown them what happened when you didn't take this warning seriously. He'd soon wake up, of course, but they'd be all too late. Mickey pounded against the door in frustration. He tried to escape the childish bickering, but he was stuck in the middle of it. His anger rose as he watched the people he was with act as little kids. He clenched his fists, gritting his teeth, and wishing for it all to end. He tried to control his emotions, but it was a constant battle. Despite the challenge, he faced the immature behavior head-on and preserved. Mike was shocked to see Gary had blown up the gas station. He yelled, "My car!" Realizing that it had been destroyed in the explosion, he angrily glared at Gary, who stood there with a satisfied smirk on his face. Mike demanded that Gary leave at once, and Gary complied, walking away as quickly as he had appeared. In the aftermath, Mike was wondering why Gary caused so much destruction. He had been tempted to get his car. The other cars remained in shock, unable to believe what had happened. The car had boasted of survival, yet it had been crushed by the cinder block. It arrived at them like a prize from a claw machine, its shell cruel and a reminder of their comrade's fate. They mourned their friend, knowing that they had nothing had been done to save him. Stimpy woke up screaming. His heart was pounding, and he was sweating, relieved that it was only a nightmare. He had dreamt of a coloring page on the wall coming to life, and picking him up and dragging him over to the closet and locking him in. He breathed out a sigh of relief, thankful that there was peace of his bedroom. He had survived the nightmare, but would never forget it. Ren tumbled down the hill, screaming in terror as Stimpy watched in shock. When the car landed in a puddle at the bottom, Ren emerged, unscathed, but for a few scrapes and cuts. He stood looking up at Stimpy and grinning madly. "This was my plan all along, Stimpy!" he shouted triumphantly. "You can't catch me!" With that, he jumped back in the car and roared out of sight. Me and my brother were curious about the old Huggy Wuggy toys we were watching on the VHR. Some of the trailers had strange noises and visuals that left us feeling a bit spooked. To relax, we took a nap on the couch, letting our minds drift away into a deep and peaceful sleep. I saw a sign for a small town and decided to go there to seek shelter. As I walked, I heard the sound of something behind me. Turning around, I saw the black monster from the back room. It was approaching me quickly, its black eyes full of hatred. I ran as fast as I could for what felt like forever, until I arrived in the town and was safe at last. Breathing heavily, I thanked the town for its protection. From then on, I always remained in the street and away from the dark back rooms. The air was stale and dusty. I could feel the ball pit and slides beneath my feet. Everywhere I looked, I saw nothing but broken arcade games and shattered remains. The sound of forgotten childhoods echoed through the empty corridors. I passed by the bouncy castle, rotting away and gradually crumbling. I looked up and saw the monsters. Their eyes were still aglow in the dark. But it was then I realized we had been running from all those years ago. In the dark and imitating power circuit room, I looked around. Everywhere I looked, I noticed piles of circuit boards and ancient machinery. I grabbed a rusty toolbox off one of the shelves and began to go through it looking for something I could use. After finding a few disassembled scraps of metal, I set to work repairing the circuits, bringing the giant Huggy Wuggy back to life. After several hours, I flipped the switch, and the Huggy Wuggy came to life, playing its old tune and grinning people once more. I screamed in terror as I ran away. Huggy Wuggy's menacing snarls echoed behind me, sending a chill up my spine. I scrambled through the window, luckily dropping onto the road I had started on. Jackson stood there with a grab pack, saving me from certain doom. Huggy Wuggy angrily let out a final howl before retreating into the dark. I hugged Jackson, relieved to have made it out alive. Joe furrowed his eyebrows in confusion as Zomboss began speaking in German. He wasn't sure what the plan was, but the zombies' minions seemed enthusiastic, cheering and clapping. Joe's heart raced as he tried to make sense of the situation, but all that he could do was pray his will to survive was strong enough. He could only hope that whatever twisted scheme Zomboss had concocted would fail. Fred stepped back, eyes wide. He saw the gleam of a knife in the clown's hand. "I don't want to do this," he pleaded, voice quivering. The clown only grinned wider. "You do indeed," he said. "It'll be my last murder, and you're the last one on my list. So what do you say? Play along, or it'll be your last game." Fred stared at the wanted poster of the clown, not sure what to make of it. Sonny told him to look at the wall, and Fred slowly turned to face the wall. His eyes widening as he saw the coloring page. It had splatters of blood all over the figure of the clown. Frightened, Fred asked, "Could I be the clown's next victim?" SpongeBob was surprised to find a room filled with items related to him. A poster, stuffed animals, and even a figurine of himself. The clown explained that he had been collecting all these items and he wanted to show them to SpongeBob. SpongeBob realized that even a clone who looked just like him was a fan. He was humbled and thanked the clone for his enthusiasm. I silently watched as he continued punching me, not being able to speak or defend myself. I felt powerless, scared, like my body was frozen. I am left with a physical reminder of that day and a fear that comes with it. It's a trauma that will stay with me and forever, and a lesson I will never forget. Mike ran after the vehicle cart, with only the hair and red sleevers making her stand out. He couldn't take his eyes off her, feeling like cartoon eyes were coming out of them. He pursued her, but she was fast. His determination kept him on her tail, but she managed to elude him. Although disappointed in not capturing the goat, Mike was glad to have experienced such an exciting moment. Gary screamed as he flew off the roller coaster and into the sky. Mike watched in awe, his eyes widening with shocked admiration. "Majestic," he whispered. Suddenly, Gary crash-landed into a nearby tree. Mike ran to the tree, checking to make sure Gary was alive. Luckily, he only sustained minor injuries. Gary shook his head in disbelief and awe, joking about his brush with death. He couldn't believe he had just gone on the wildest ride of his life. Mr. Creeper was on the run from the three agitated sheep, but the second one was by far the angriest. As he turned to look back at them, he lost sight of where he was going and collided with the fence, causing him to black out. When he came to, he found himself cornered by the three sheep who had thrown him there. It was a dire situation to be in, but Mr. Creeper was determined to find a way out. Mario wanted to pursue a music-related activity and thought of creating a jazz band. He enlisted Mickey Mouse, Luigi, and Sonic as a pianist, clarinetist, and trumpeter, respectively. He couldn't decide between Spider-Man and pick the speech for another member. Mario took charge as leader of the band, and they began practicing and rehearsing together. The band worked hard to perfect their sound and get ready for their upcoming performances. Mario was thrilled to have a new passion to share with his talented friends. Thank you for reading. This concludes the content we have for now. We hope you found it informative and engaging. Please stay tuned for future updates and feel free to provide any feedback or comments. Have a great day!